Finally.
Hey, Jim.
You got to turn your microphone and your camera on every time. It's kind of weird. You'd think in today's technology world, they'd be able to assume that you wanted it that way. I don't know.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. I think we're waiting for Susan to come join us.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Did you guys get a list of those questions I'd sent out? Somebody had sent out?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I looked at them and then promptly forgot about them. So
I'm assuming it's the e-commerce panel questions.
Yeah. Yes.
There's 4 of them.
Yeah. And I'll
same ones I hope that I answered.
I'll try not to throw you too many curveballs. How's that?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Mike, how do I pronounce your last name?
Dvorscak.
Dvorscak. Okay.
Yes.
I'm a musician by trade, and that looked like Dvorscak, one of our composers. So I want
Close.
Yes.
Close, yeah.
Well, my grandmother said that we were related, so I have not taken issue with that, but I would like to have gotten a little more of the those genes.
The royalties, maybe the royalties even.
Well, I'm not sure how that would work out, but be that as it may.
Yeah.
James, Susan is on her way.
Okay. And you'll tell me when I start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all are live right now, but she's on her way.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Super. Yeah, Mike, your first name would have to be Anton, so I don't know if that's going to fit in the family lineage there.
It's all right.
I found it's funny because, as I said, I've done these before with Consultant Connect and a different platform, and you don't have to turn your microphone and your camera on every time you change rooms.
Yeah.
There's Susan.
Man, I was there the whole time. It's strange. And I've been in the luncheons.
Yeah, I was just talking with you. So now that we're all here, we'll go ahead and start our panel discussion on e-commerce. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad you're here. My name is James Fenton. I'm the Chief Economic Development Officer for the city of Gallatin, which is just in the northeast quadrant of the Nashville MSA. And today we're talking about e-commerce and all that's been going on here recently. Real quick, before we get into some of these questions, if the 3 of you would go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll start with the guy from Georgia Tech, Mike.
Thank you. Well, I'm Mike Dvorscak, and I'm with the William B. Hare Company. We're a commercial real estate brokerage firm, and my primary function is site selection work, and the vast majority of that right now anyway has to do with e-commerce and industrial and distribution types of facilities. I've worked for Phoenix and far north as New Jersey, and am very excited to be with some smart people. Maybe I'll be able to learn some things today.
I think we all hope. How about Susan?
I am Susan Arledge. I lead our site selection team at ESRP Real Estate in Dallas, Texas. Known Tim a very long time. Seems like we seem to follow
a lot this way.
We seem to follow each other around the country, amazingly. Yeah, do a lot of work in e-commerce, back office, financial services, projects that have large employee dense environments.
That's challenging these days. Tim.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, I've cited, my career has been both in operations and in site selection, specifically site selection from a consulting perspective, but as a 3PL, and I actually did site selection for e-commerce sites in Europe and Canada and the United States. I've toured the FedEx facility in Memphis and the one in Louisville by UPS and USPS priority mail sites, and actually saw a German post hub in Germany one time. So I've been in the business for a long time, longer than anybody here has been alive, seems like. So that's kind of my focus is manufacturing and industrial. So today it's e-commerce, just about is the only thing you say.
Yeah, super. So with this panel, we're going to draw on your expertise in this e-commerce industry. Can you maybe just kind of start with what are the assets, specific assets that decision makers look for in this industry when they're looking to locate or expand?
Well, I'll start that off because that has really always been about labor. But since COVID, it has really been all about labor. And it seems like now every single client is wanting us to prove up not only the cost of the labor, but the availability and the sustainability of a workforce. So more and more, we're looking at communities' workforce training programs and trying to understand what they are due to continue to develop that workforce. The competition for fulfillment, warehouse, picker, packers, all of those jobs, material handlers is just incredible right now. So we've worked with a lot of our clients trying to help them understand what the incentives are, and not state incentives. I mean, workforce incentives from employers to take these positions, bonuses, signing bonuses, parties at work, drawings, giveaways. It's just a very interesting environment right now to attract labor.
Tim, what are you seeing?
Well, first of all, the kinds of facilities they look for depending on what's the activity of the project and how big it is. I guess two big issues. They're looking for different things. Like Susan says, from a labor perspective, if you're putting in 1 million square foot e-commerce facility, then it's got 1,000 people in it. That becomes the top issue, no question about it. But you got to have the land and you got to have the building as well. But if you're putting in a last mile delivery location and it's going to only hire about 15 people, then you still have to look at the labor because you still got to hire those people. But then the sites of the buildings and location to the exact geo you need to be from a transportation cost perspective percolate more to the top. So.
Interesting. And you, Mike, what specific assets are you seeing folks look for?
Well, it seems like, I'm primarily involved with the dirt. I hear a lot about the labor and some of the other characteristics. So when they get to me, it's all about proximity to the population and to transportation. And as I had an appointment this morning with a potential client, and we were talking about just those things. And I said, there's lots of land out there, but land you could get zoned, not so much. And land that's already zoned,
not so
much less. So things are not matching up. That's the supply and demand of this. And it's going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Interesting. So obviously during this pandemic, e-commerce has obviously exploded. We even have a 2.7 million square foot distribution center here in Gallatin, and they're they're trying to hire 600 more people right now, but they're also automating a lot. How different does this industry look now than it did a year ago?
Well, when you just look at the cost, just in May, the average U.S. price for refrigerated transport was $3.09 a mile, which had increased over 20% from February, which is the first time it had ever gotten over 3 cents a mile. So what you're seeing is there's a shortage of raw materials being able to be delivered to facilities to meet delivery times. Companies are turning away business to be able to meet demand. The food sector has been really hit hard. I've really had that kind of bullwhip effect where they've had to just really pull back after rapidly scaling up to meet all of that demand. So suppliers are scrambling, and it's really been a challenge with not just the increased cost, but just the ability to meet the demand.
Yeah, the thing that's really changed that I've seen that's going to be a big long-term impact. The inventory thing with the supply and demand out of sync is going to stay with us for probably at least until the end of the year, through the holiday season for sure, in my opinion. But is the way that the pandemic has solidified grocery delivery to the home, because it's gone completely up the scale to even seniors being comfortable with have somebody else pick their vegetables and actually deliver to the home. And grocery chains are morphing their business model to include dark stores now, where they do nothing but pick inside a dark store with no retail at all, and just to get the product to the consumer on a faster scale. So I think that's really that's how the industry looks a lot different. But everybody's right here. It's like a perfect storm. We've got a problem with labor. We got a problem with supply. And to Michael's point, if you don't, a piece of dirt is not a site. A piece of dirt has to be permitted. It has to be serviced by all these supply, fiber and power and water and gas and electricity, etc., or it's not buildable. And if it's not buildable, it's useless. And your time to market in today's world, with all these people going after all these buildings, is critical. So spec buildings are being in the big cities. They're not so much in the smaller areas, and that's a problem for the smaller areas, is to be able to have any kind of a ready building, that would be able to capture this.
Especially in those smaller communities, you can, in the past we've had communities build a building, but they aren't able to build a 1 million square foot building, so they don't have that.
Right.
And then they built that 40,000 square foot building, and they put that up to every RFI out there, and that building's still sitting there. So it's it is a challenge for these smaller communities. How about you?
Yeah, I think though that you can get yourself prepared, but not spend the money, because once you put the pad in, put the concrete floor in and the walls up, you're locked into that particular design and that particular space size. Unless you extend it obviously out one end or the other, you can get a bigger building. But if you get the pad prepared and get the zoning done and you get the services to it, now you're way ahead of the people that have just got dirt. Okay. You're never going to be able to compete with a Dallas or an Atlanta or a Houston in order to be able to have spec buildings under production all the time. But you're not putting your community at a burden of carrying that building either. But you can build the building without having to worry about zoning and public hearings and that sort of thing.
Speed to market. Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I'm seeing right now that I'm hearing about my clients is increased materials cost and construction cost in general. I think a lot of us know about Amazon buying a couple of steel plants to ensure their supply. I was hearing today about a developer buying a competitor's building, million-square-foot building for $44 a building foot. And he flat told me you couldn't touch that number today to build it. So you're seeing a big impact there. Now, because, and you know, most of these developers turn around and sell the buildings, all right? And that's strictly on a return basis. Well, since returns that investors will take, cap rates, are so low, that is bailing out most of these projects. But there's some rumblings about it up, and when interest rates go up, return rates go up at the same time, and that will back these things down. And so you'll start seeing a lot of pushback on all of these price increases. You'll see owners trying to get higher rents, and these are the kind of things we start seeing when the development cycle starts to go like this, when it's been going like this.
How far out do you see that cross coming?
I don't know how to answer that without getting political. But
Fair enough.
if, let's just say that if there are big tax law changes, you can time it from there.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be this calendar year that the cross takes place, but at some point in time, it usually does. It's kind of probably on that glide path for the office sector, is because the going forward vision for that particular side of the industry is not going to be as nearly as rosy as industrial.
Yeah, clearly, that kind of stuff. So what are some of these recurrent problems you run into? Are there themes and recurring problems that happen out there as you're out there looking for sites?
Well, I think Susan mentioned the biggest one in the beginning is labor. And it depends on a lot of times companies actually do their own site selection. They don't use people like us, and so they don't actually realize what the true cost of labor is in the community. Because if Amazon's in that community, now the minimum wage is $17 an hour. Okay, that's what they're paying as a minimum in a lot of their buildings now. So I think the cost of the labor, as well as the availability of labor, as Susan mentioned right at the beginning, is shocking to those people. That's a big.
And I definitely think you're going to see a rise in the use of robotics. I don't think there's any other answer. And robotics scares some people because they think it's taking jobs, which is really not. Robots are doing jobs people don't want and they can't fill. And things that tend to be repetitive and cause injuries as a result of the repetitive task, it's a much better solution. And at least so far, these robots aren't demanding benefits and insurance. Now that may change in the future, but you get a robot that can pick and sort and do all that, then it makes so much more sense. And typically the ROI for automation for a company is under 2 years. And they could spend 2 years trying to staff up, train, have people leave, retrain, and the costs are just getting astronomical. Amazon says they save $22 million a year by using the robots at their fulfillment centers. And if you've seen them, they're all mostly named after Sesame Street characters, and they're incredibly well managed and well run. I mean, they have their own little paths. They don't run over people walking in the warehouse. And so I think you're going to see, just by total necessity, a large increase in the use of robotics, and not just in the big Amazon facilities, but in the smaller one as well.
Then you get some better paying jobs when people have to maintain those robots. And
Right. The jobs are going to be different. It's right. Susan's right. The jobs are going to be different, and they're going to be more skill requirements, and therefore you're actually going to get paid more. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
But I think it also means that companies are actually making a significantly larger investment in that facility, because it's not now just the four walls of the building and a couple of fork trucks and maybe some racking. This is significantly more time consuming to bring it out of the ground, and technology is more intricate to be able to implement and train. So they really have to make it the right decision, the right location, the right ceiling height, the right footprint in order to have it perfect at the end.
And with that larger CapEx by these companies, I mean, that's a better revenue stream for a community most often. So it makes it a little more attractive.
It is. We've seen a lot of communities trying to promote the site first. And I think, to Tim's point, we have to look at all of this, and Michael's as well. You have to have a site that can be developed in a community that does have the labor, where the workforce does have the training, and where Amazon is not. I mean, all those factors kind of have to be in place. So it really makes a lot of sense for communities to be marketing that package as a whole, not just sending us as site selection consultants and brokers, we have a site for you. Because the due diligence that has to go in to even make sense of that location is pretty extensive.
Labor is probably the most the big driver, and I'm familiar with the project. I was working with someone, a competing site, but I'm familiar with a project that was a 1 million square foot distribution project that the company told a favored developer, go to this town and tie up this site because this is where we want to be. So this developer went down and spent a couple $100,000, and people getting all into that. Then the company ran the labor numbers 6 months later and said, oh, wait, we're not coming. And so that company was out time, effort, money. They could have been working on other things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm familiar with another project, major retailer. One of the criteria for them was, we don't want to be near Amazon. Back to your point of, this is the wage that they pay. So I see that as a big issue. And I think, go back to Susan's point, if you've got the other characteristics in a community, like it's a great place to live, amenities, the labor force, education, things that make it a place where somebody wants to be, there may be some land that hasn't really been looked at very hard, or so-and-so's family just inherited something that they don't want to keep. Okay. And unless it's a really small community, lots of economic developers can't keep up with all of those things and everything else at the same time. So there's ways to put things together a lot of times if you've got the basics.
Yeah, let's keep on that theme. A lot of places may not be on a radar. What is it you guys want to see from a community that would get you there? What do these communities out there need to do?
I can give you a great example. I'll use Kentucky, and their Lead Kentucky program is, when you look at what a state, a city, a community is doing, what you're looking for is really cradle to career prep. What is the plan that's in place? And Kentucky's lieutenant governor has done a great job of putting together this Commonwealth education continuum, which is a focus on getting students in higher education to become specific experts in a field. They have the Promise Scholarship that allows disadvantaged students to earn a degree without incurring debt. That's so critical right now, because whether it's career tech or college or community college, one of the main factors is cost. Kentucky waives testing for the GED, so anyone can take the test. Invested in money to recruit diverse teachers, and so it just, that's what you have to look back and say, what is the state doing? What is workforce doing that is helping making a sustainable workforce in this community? And continuing on for Kentucky, and by the way, I'm not being paid by Kentucky to say anything, but it's fascinating that, you know, their digital divide was showing them that a lot of children didn't have computers at home, so they deployed hotspots to all the K through 12 households in the state, lowering the lack of internet access from 15 to 2%. So you look at that and you think, wow, that is creating an incentive for people to stay in Kentucky, go to school in Kentucky, learn a skill in Kentucky, and join that workforce. And thank you, Kentucky, and please send me an invitation to the Churchill Downs.
The key she's talking about there is skills, though, right? You know, I think that's the key that's important, is the skills and the ability for economic development people and the business community to drive those educational communities to actually produce graduates with those skills, and then they have the jobs for those skills to be used. It's an ecosystem, right? It's not, you can't be done independently, because the business community has to tell you what the skills are they want out of it, and that's what you have to be dealing with. Educational communities are used to saying, we measure our success in degrees. Well, companies don't buy degrees anymore much. They buy skills. So there was a disconnect, but the economic development community can make the difference, and as she talks about, Kentucky's done a good job.
So we got 2 minutes left here, Gene, is that right?
Yeah, this might be a good time to switch over to the tables now.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Are we table hopping again?
You're going.
What floor are we going to?
You're either table 3, 4, or 5. And the lunch pool people will make sure that you get it. What, I forget who's assigned to what table, but they'll get you there.
Mike's 3, Susan's 4, and Tim is 5.
Very good.
Mike, Susan, Tim, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.